Hello and welcome to my talk on the realities of releasing small games on Steam. In this talk, I'll be going over the visibility that you get when you release your game, pricing considerations, various discounts you can go into. I'll also be talking about bundles and tags. So who am I? Hello, I'm Brian. I've been working in the games industry for over 10 years. Most of that work's been with a small Canadian studio called Reverie World Studios. We put out our first game on Steam in 2013. That was via Greenlight. Got through on the fourth round and we had over 60,000 upvotes. My most well-known game is probably Medieval Kingdom Wars. That was in Steam's Best of 2019 list in 2 categories. It was one of the top-selling games in January, and it was one of the top-selling games coming out of early access. I could talk a bit more about Reverie's games, but that probably wouldn't help somebody who's releasing their first game today. When we first put our games on Steam, we had an account manager help choose a date for us where there was no other game releasing. And when we put out Medieval Kingdom Wars, we had a mailing list of over 250,000 players from our previous games. These are not the advantages you have when you release your first game. I wouldn't have those when I started my micro studio, Bad Logic Studios. So I decided to release some small games. So why did I do small games? Well, firstly, I wanted to figure out if I even had the time to make my own games. I was busy with work, busy with my family. Time was very limited. I didn't know what I could make with it. So I deliberately chose something that was relatively easy to make. I went with action platformers. And I was hoping that from these small games, I could learn how Steam works so that when I did release a bigger game, I wouldn't make all the mistakes that I'd make on the first game. Right, so the first game I've released was called Fortune and Gloria. It's a procedurally generated action platformer, and we shoot the bad guys and rescue hostages. I put it on Steam for $9.99. I chose this price point because I'd seen various talks about how games are underpriced and we should be bumping up our prices. This was the maximum price I thought I could charge for a game of this scope, and I thought I'd just see how it went. I didn't actually put the game on as coming soon for very long, so we didn't generate many wish lists. Only had 531 wish lists when it launched. I wouldn't recommend this. I'd recommend having a much longer coming soon period than I did and try and build as many wish lists as possible. When I released the game, got over 400,000 impressions and a click-through rate of 2% gave us just over 9,000 visits. From those visits, only sold 26 copies, got an additional 142 wish lists, and generated $184 in revenue. That's not unexpected, still disappointing. Made me wonder, okay, should I have priced the game a bit lower? Would it have done better? I mean, you can't really A/B test prices on Steam, but what I could do is I could release another game. So that's what I did. Right, so Talk Like a Pirate Day was coming up. I thought, okay, pirate theme, I'll release something. I took the game that I had, I changed all the art, I tweaked some of the mechanics, and I had a new game that I could release in a relatively short time. And I released that with a price point of $2.99. You can release it lower price on Steam, but this was the lowest price I thought I could put it on where I'd still be able to do meaningful discounts. Again, it had a short pre-launch period and you had 301 wish lists going into launch. And in launch week, we had just over 400,000 impressions again, but less click-through and visits were about 5,000. Sold a similar amount of copies as Fortune and Gloria, but because of the lower price points, the revenue generated was much lower. Okay, so this sort of indicated that, okay, maybe a lower price point doesn't necessarily mean you'll sell more games. Certainly not enough to make up the difference from the higher price point. But I wanted to confirm this, so I made another game. Halloween was coming up at this point, so I thought, okay, zombies are a perennial favorite for Halloween. I'll throw in steampunk just to mix it up a bit, and we end up with Steampunk Graveyard, where you shoot zombies in a procedurally generated graveyard in catacombs. Again, I'll put this on for $2.99. Similar sort of pre-launch period, but wishlist were much lower. I'm not sure why. Could be the time of the year, could be the theme of the game, who knows. The impressions were fairly similar to the other games. Lower but similar click-through and visits to the pirate game. But we did sell more units than Pirate Island Rescue, and consequently more revenue. Could have been because it was Halloween when it launched, but it's still much less than what I got for Fortune Gloria. So this confirmed for me that a lower price is not necessarily going to give you more sales. So you're better off going for a higher price point if you're going to release a game. Right, so just a bit about how launch visibility works. This is sort of like a very basic version. There's various other bits to it. But essentially what happens is your game gets put at the top of the all new releases list and other lists that sort based on release date. And it slowly gets pushed down by all the other games that are being released. And there's dozens of games released each day. So it's not long before you're pushed into obscurity. So in the meantime, you've been put at the bottom of the new and trending and top selling lists. And you're trying to sell enough games so that you get pushed higher and higher on those and eventually get into the sight of anyone who's browsing on the store. So that didn't happen with my game. So what we're looking at with those is probably a base level of visibility that you get if you don't do much marketing and you don't push your sales. All right, so what can you do inside of Steam to improve things? Well, you can look at various ways of improving your click-through rate. You can tag a game appropriately so that it's put in front of the right players, and you can update your capsule art and logo, make sure that they're clear and high quality. Most of the time, it's just a very tiny image in a list where there's 25 or more other games, and you need to stand out as being the quality game. You also need to choose some good screenshots for your store page, because when you mouse over the capsule, you get a small carousel of screenshots, and they show the first 4 screenshots. If you're just using like the blandest screenshots of the menus in your game, then it's not really doing your game justice. So put in something exciting or meaningful to your game, and that might encourage people to click through. And then once they've clicked through, what you need to do is focus on your conversion and tell your players about your game, make them want to buy it. So use your player verbs, let them know what they're going to be doing in your game. Use GIFs to show off those player verbs or other interesting features. And in your trailer, show gameplay. People want to see what they're going to be doing in your game. If you've got a cinematic trailer, that's fine. Release it outside of Steam to get people to come to your page, or put it as your second trailer on Steam, but the first trailer really should show gameplay. And then there's announcements. So while your game's coming soon, just post every now and then saying, okay, we're working on this thing for the game. It's coming soon. Just to show that you're active, and it'll encourage people to wishlist and then post-launch. If you announce every few months, just to show people that you're alive. And that's particularly important for multiplayer games, because if someone comes to your store page and they can't see that you're active, they'll just assume that the game's dead and they'll bounce. Just a bit more about tags before we move on is there was game for Reverie that I decided I was going to update the tags for. At the point I did that, it had been coming soon for about 12 months. And most of that time looked like the left side of that graph you see down the bottom. And then guess where I changed the tags? The numbers at the top show the week before this, and the second row of numbers show this week. That's displayed in the graph. Interesting to note that even though it had less impressions, the click-through rate was significantly higher, which then led to much more visits to the page, because now Steam knew which players to put the game in front of, and so they were more likely to click. And that's what you should be doing, tagging a game so Steam knows what to do with it. So improving your click-through and conversion is all well and good, but you still need to drive people to your store, because that baseline level of visibility that you get from Steam isn't going to push you up the new and trending or top sellers lists. So what are some of the things you can do? Well, this is where marketing comes in. This is not an exhaustive list. There's lots of things you can do. There's a few thoughts I had. Each of these items can be a talk in its own right, and there's many articles out there that you can read that will give you much more detail than I'll go through. So, okay, what you can do is you can list your game. There's various sites where they keep track of different games throughout there that are scraped by other sites and helps with your promotion. You should be tweeting about your game. There's lots of hashtags out there. Here's just a small sample. You can build a community for your game. This doesn't work for all games, but there are tools around. Use Discord, for example. Mailing lists are good. They're less effort than maintaining a community, I think. But they tend to be people who are still fairly interested in your game because they've gone through the effort of signing up. If you want information on how to run a mailing list, go to howtomarketgame.com. Chris Zukowski is very into mailing lists, and he's pretty much an expert at that. You should also be looking to build a press list so that you can contact them about reviewing a game or about news about your game. So look for people who've reviewed or written articles about similar games and just gather their emails so that you can send out information at the right time. And when you do send out information to them, you want to have a press kit, or if you're sending to streamers, maybe a content kit, because sometimes their image requirements vary. If you need help putting together a press kit, go to dopresskit.com. That's, well, Brahmi Ismail was one of the people who put that together, so you know it's quality. Press releases for your game. When you announce you're coming soon, put out a press release. When you launch a game, put out a press release. If you're going to have a beta sometime, do a press release. That's what your mailing list is for. Your press list is for. If you want to just get people who aren't on your press list, there's services like gamespress.com where you can upload a press list and journalists will go and find it. You also want to get your game out to streamers before you launch. There's various services for that. Keymail, Hoovit. If you want to do sponsored streams, you can have a look at indieboost.com. They've got a service called Catapult where streamers will bid to do a stream about your game and you pay them based on whatever rate they put up. Reverie have done that for a few of their games and it's worked out quite well. Most of these other things are free or cheap that you can do, so it's not going to cost you more than time. All right, the last thing I want to talk about regarding launch is launch discounts. It's hard to quantify if a launch discount actually increases your sales because you can't really say, okay, this player bought the game at a discount, but this other player probably would have paid full price. But what you can do is you can see that the game appears in various special offers lists and sections on Steam when you have a discount. And what I did is I had a look at all my games at Bad Logic and the Reverie games, and just added up all those sections, and found that it's a roughly 5% increase in page visits from all these special offers. So you could argue that having a launch discount will mean that you get an extra 5% sales. Now, the smallest discount you can do is 10%. So if you're only getting 5% increase in sales, then you're actually losing money. But what you could also argue is that it's shown on other parts of the website, and there might be people who did buy the game because it was on discount. So 10%, yeah, that's fine. Do that for your launch discount. I wouldn't do anything bigger because you're essentially stealing from yourself then, and you're reducing your chances of moving up on the top sellers list, because that's based on revenue. A couple of things to note about early access. The launch discount applies to your initial release. So once you've launched the game in early access, that's when that will apply. If you're going into full release, you need to have a custom discount, and that's caught out a few developers before, because the usual discounts rules apply at that time, and that's not having a price increase within the last 30 days and not having a sale in the previous 6 weeks. It used to be 8 weeks, but Steam have recently reduced that. Another thing about early access is launch visibility doesn't apply until you go to full release. You do get some visibility when you launch in early access, but your biggest spike of visibility will come when you transition to full release. So if you are launching an early access game, don't be surprised if your impressions and visits are quite low initially. All right, so that's launch, but what happens after launch? Because a lot can happen. For my games, they've been out for about 2 years now. I've put them in various sales, and they've generated income from those sales. And if you have a look at these figures comparing launch week to lifetime, you can see that it's between 5 and 10 times the launch week revenue over the lifetime of the game. So that's something to think about if you're actually generating a decent amount of income in launch week, is that you are looking at something fairly decent. Interesting to note here that Fortune Gloria, despite the much lower unit sales, still has almost as much revenue as Pirate Island Rescue and Steampunk Graveyard combined. So that's just the effect of launching a game at a higher price point. So keep that in mind when you're choosing the price of your game. I mentioned there were sales. Okay, there's various sales that you can opt into. There's the weekly deals, custom sales, and seasonal sales. Seasonal sales don't affect your scheduling for custom sales, so you can put them next to each other if you wanted to. You might want to sometimes, but not always recommended. And then there's curated sales. These are usually for the more popular games that Steam staff have picked out. And there's midweek madness, weekend deal, daily deal. Reverie have been in some of those. We usually got them when we asked for them because we were going to do like a content update and we're going to have a sales event. We just asked, could we have one of these things? It was typically a midweek madness. They gave us. They didn't always give us one when we asked, but one time we got a weekend deal because someone else had pulled out and Steam knew that we wanted one. So they said, hey, would you like to take the spot? And we said, yes. Turned out great. Okay, so for those sales that you can opt into, I've been doing these throughout the times that the game's been out. This is for Pirate Island Rescue. I did similar sales for the other games as well, but you can see I did 2 week-long deals with varying levels of impressions. Did a custom sale. That was a 2-week sale, and I did a update visibility round at the time. Had an announcement on the store page along with an update, and that turned out okay. The summer sale, seasonal sales used to be good. They're not as good as custom sales or week-long deals these days, but still better than a typical week where you might get 0 sales. So still opt into them if you can. All right, so let's compare the best of those week-long sales with the custom sale. It's fairly similar click-through rate, similar discounts, but if you have a look, impressions are twice as much, revenue and units are similarly twice as much as the week-long deal. So, that was a 14-day custom sale. Week-long deals obviously only 7 days. So essentially, the sales are as good as each other. So depends what you want to do, but 14 days of sales is better than 7. So if you've got the energy to do an update and update visibility round, go for that. If not, weekly deal's fine. Okay, so what can you do with this information? Well, you can come up with a discount schedule. You know roughly when the seasonal sales are going to be. You can guesstimate the dates of those. This is my estimates for 2021. Then you look for the gaps between those sales and you plan to have a custom sale in there. So for example, we've got here, if you launch a game in April, you have your 10% launch discount, you get your launch visibility, you have a nice spike, things start to flatline. So in June, you run a custom sale at 20%. The reason why I say 20 is because that's the point at which wishlist emails kick in. If you have a sale with a lower discount, you're not going to have the wishlist emails going out, so you're not going to get a spike from that. You can use one of your update visibility rounds. You're given 5 of those by default. You can earn more, and then by selling the game. They used to be more useful, but they still generate some visibility for you, so why not use them? Seasonal sales, as I said before, aren't as good as custom sales, so maybe not increase your discount then, just keep the previous one. Save your discount increases for when you have the custom sale and step them up over time. The reason why I say that is because you get most of your visibility in these sales, so people will either buy the game or they'll wishlist it. If they buy it, great. If they wishlist it, that probably means they're looking for a lower price point, so hit them with the next sale. Try and get them to buy it then. I wouldn't step up the discounts too much over time. Here I've mostly gone for a 5% increase. Over a year, you can get up to about 45% off at that point. Over the next year, you might want to keep going and continue up to say 75%, but I wouldn't go much higher than that. Right, another thing I want to talk about is bundles. I put my games in some bundles. They're a way to buy the games with a small extra discount. You can have a look at the figures down the bottom at your leisure when you pause this later. But I just want to put those into context. More than a quarter of the units sold of my games were from bundles, and almost a fifth of the revenue came from bundles. So they are something worth considering. You might have been getting one of those sales anyway, but the extra sale you get for the other game might not have happened without the bundle, so it's something to consider. 14% of people who bought the 2-game bundle had previously bought a game. That means there was still a significant number of people who bought both games at the same time. I only put the 3-game bundle on recently. That was at a player request, and it's done surprisingly well, and that accounts for 10% of my total units sold. And the people who've bought the bundle, between 25 and 50% of those had previously bought one of the games. So it's nice when people have bought your game and then want to buy your other game. So that's good. Another type of sale I want to talk about is tag sales. Steam has recently started doing more sales events based on tags, and that's something that they'll email about you if you've got an appropriately tagged game. And developers need to opt into those, and it's a similar opt-in system to what the seasonal sales have. The visibility it gets is reasonable. It shows an event capsule in the special offers section on the front page, and then there's a banner at the top of each game's each participating game store page. So if someone sees one game that they like the tag of, and then they see that banner, they might click through and look for more games with that tag. I was recently in one of those sales because Steam did a Pirate Day sale, and I obviously had a game tagged with pirates, Pirate Island Rescue, and it did reasonably well in terms of visibility. These are the same sales that I was showing you before in the other graph, and they're absolutely dwarfed by the number of impressions I got from the Steam Pirate sale. I had over 1 million impressions just from the Steam sale page. So let's compare how launch week went compared to the Steam Pirate sale. And I had twice the impressions from the Pirate sale as I did in launch week. A lower click-through rate from the page itself, but I have a better click-through rate from the rest of Steam. And the units sold were much more in the Pirate sale. Revenue was still more than the launch week. It could have been better, but it was heavily discounted at that point. But it's still surprising to me how much you can get from this. So if I had a better capsule on there and wasn't competing with so many bigger games, I probably would have had a better click-through rate. So if you've got a decent game with a decent capsule and you've done all the right things, then you might get into a tag sale and do wonderful things. So that brings me to my conclusion, and the point there again about tagging your game appropriately. It puts you in front of the right players. Great things happen if you get into a tag sale. Make sure you do all you can to improve your click-through rate, and one of the main things is capsule art and logo. Make sure that they're high quality and clear. And once they get to the store page, give all the players all the information they need to buy the game. Make it easy for them. Use all the sales tools that Steam gives you. Opt into all the sales you can. Step up your discounts. Get all the income you can from your game. And of course, market your game outside of Steam. You get a certain amount of visibility within Steam, but that's helped much more by having people coming from outside and pushing up your sales, so you get higher on those lists. Hopefully this talk's been useful for you, and your launch will go better. At this point, I'd be asking you if you had any questions, but since we're not in the same room, I'll be online for the event, and you can contact me on Twitter or via email. Thank you for listening, and I hope your launch goes well.